all of us, I am thrilled to welcome Pat Gelsinger, CEO of Intel. I know. He's going to be great. Pat began his career in 1979 at Intel, becoming its first chief technology officer and leading its enterprise group during more than 3 decades with the company. After serving in executive leadership roles at VMware and EMC, he returned to be CEO in 2021 at Intel. He'll be joined by CNBC reporter Christina Partsinevelos. Christina joined CNBC in May 2021 and serves as the NASDAQ reporter for the network, covering NASDAQ movers with a focus on semiconductors. Previously, she served as a business correspondent and economist at the Fox Business Network, covering beats including technology, the White House, and the Federal Reserve. Please join me in welcoming Pat and Christina to the stage.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Pat. I'm very excited for this. I know it's late in the day, and we're in Vegas, right? So we want to get the party started. And I wanted to get the party started with asking you a bunch of questions, but I have to preface, you're in your quiet period right now, so I'm going to try my best to still pepper them in and hopefully get an answer.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
So if we're going to start with the conversation about artificial intelligence in general, and you have those leaders that seem to be taking sides, doomsdayers, maybe Elon Musk, talking about superintelligence and how it's going to outsmart humans, and then you have Zuckerberg, on the other hand, that maybe is taking a little bit of a softer approach. Where do you fall on that scale?
I'm an optimist, and I'll say, I'm a technology optimist, right? And
what does that mean?
Well, over 40 years now in the technology industry, just technology is this neutral platform, right? Meaning it's not good or bad, right? It's always how we shape it, how we use it. And I have this deep belief that with technology, right, and we're shaping it as a force for good, and we continue to solve problems that could have been solved before. And 40 years in the industry, I just believe that technology, including AI, we can shape it as this incredible force for good. And today, would you go to a radiologist that wasn't using AI-assisted radiology? Absolutely not. Just like you wouldn't have gone to a finance guy who didn't use a spreadsheet, right? Technology is this powerful, wonderful force that we get to shape for good.
You're using the example of technology, and you said 40 years, but AI in general is being adopted at a much faster pace. And I almost feel like many politicians, maybe all of us, are not even ready for that moment and how to make sure that it's going to be for good and not for bad.
Yeah, well, I always think, technology is moving faster than products. Products move faster than business, and business moves faster than regulation. So regulation is always running after trying to catch up to the implications of technology for it. And I do think as we have a broader and broader influence and the world is going more digital, it becomes more incumbent upon us as technologists to be engaged in the policy discussions, in the regulatory frameworks, so that we help close that gap, that regulation is in place to support this ever-hastening pace of technology and the implications on society.
But can you trust a for-profit company to do good? Like, didn't Google get rid of their motto, do no evil, in 2015?
Well, I think, as we think about technology, right, it really is this composite, right? And, some of it's technology companies, right? Do you trust technology companies? Part of our brand is to be a trusted technology provider. But you're also trusting the academic community, right? And increasingly, and I believe a lot of the concerns around AI, we got to make it open, we got to make it accessible, we have to make it explainable, we have to make it responsible. And every day we're not doing that, we open up domains that people shouldn't trust us, and we should get challenged. So making AI, as we say at Intel, AI everywhere, but doing so through open technology access, I think that's always the key. Can I look inside? How did it make those decisions? And until we can answer those questions, show how it was good for society, how it met the regulatory domains and demonstrated consistent good, okay, we shouldn't let it in the wild.
AI everywhere, just for our audience. You've been saying that for how long now? Because I know other competitors have, entered the...
About a year.
About a year.
Right, so, I think we claim that. I think we claim the AI PC. So some of those are clearly, we're the driving force behind it. But, flattery, we love it when people copy us.
I set that up for you, just so that you could drop that there. You just mentioned AI PC, so let's just pivot to that right now. And you guys are really smart. You've been covering this probably a lot longer than I have, but it seems like the definition of AI PC, AI server is still a little murky. And let's start with the server, actually. Is that the ratio of accelerators to CPUs, no longer using just an operating system, it's a platform now? Can you just describe what the heck it means?
Yeah, and when we think about this, we say, are you able to achieve certain levels of performance, right, on AI-driven workloads? And today, for instance, if I'm doing a high-end training workload, I need a GPU. CPUs aren't powerful enough to do that. But for a lot of inferencing workloads, my AI-augmented CPUs, hey, they do inferencing just fine. Right, at that level. And training, can I go train the model or can I go use the model? How many people create weather models versus how many people use weather models? A few create, many use. So that inferencing workload, we're driving to AI enhance our Xeons, our CPUs, so that we can enable that everywhere. So it's not like I need to set up some special servers in my data centers if I'm an enterprise, or take my data to the cloud if I'm an enterprise. I can use my data in my data centers on the CPUs that I know and love from Intel. And that's what we're off to do with AI enhanced, even as we're building our accelerators to go compete at that high-end training market as well.
And then what about the hybrid market then? Because that's an area that you guys are focused on.
Yeah, and we do think that there's going to be these cloud-assisted environments, where people will do foundational models in the cloud, where we need these big, huge environments to create these foundational models. But most of you are going to use those models, right? And you're going to find smaller models. And people today, as we're hitting trillion parameter models, they're finding ways to say, if I train it on the right data, can I get by with a 10 billion parameter model that allows me to run it on my data centers without specialized equipment at much lower cost per inference? And that seems to be a huge trend of llama, tiny models, as people are finding more nimble ways, as we've described it, to be able to run it on their data for their applications.
Then are you perhaps saying that the cloud world has the curve of adoption and the use of cloud maybe is going to go like this as we become more efficient with utilizing it? And so maybe we should, and I'm thinking from the investor perspective on CNBC, we constantly have these guests on, and is cloud going to keep growing like this or hit a plateau because you become more efficient with products from Intel, for example?
Yeah, I think there's going to be the science of AI. I think there's no end in sight. These machines are going to get bigger and bigger as we try to find new, more complex models, as we move from simple models of text and we move to 3D, animation, physical worlds, et cetera. So I think the science of AI shows no end to bigger machines. They're just going to get bigger, faster, right? And it's, truly as a technologist, one of the most exciting times in computing history. This is thrilling.
One of or is? If you were to say that in your career right now.
Some of the early days were pretty exciting, but this rivals some of the early days of the PC, early days of Moore's Law. This is an exciting period of time, and I'd say, for my career, it's like, after 40 years, this is pretty thrilling. We are going to build some of the greatest technology that solves some of human problems at a pace that we haven't seen for decades. As I came back to Intel, I said, this is sort of boring, add some more cores, the same power envelope, go to PCI 5, okay, boring. This is not boring. This is an exciting period of time.
You just said PC, so let's just talk about that for a second, and the AI PC. Everyone is talking about it at CES. I'm sure a lot of you here have heard, you heard that conversation. And many are promising that their AI PC is going to revolutionize the market and help the PC refresh, which is, 2024 now, and everybody's going to be, getting this on their laptop. But let's say, the average Joe watching, do they care even for the next 5 to 10 years about this?
Yeah, the analogy I've used is the early days of Wi-Fi, right? I helped to create Wi-Fi, right? Helped to create USB, helped to create Wi-Fi. And we developed Wi-Fi, and for 2 to 3 years, sort of nothing happened with Wi-Fi. And then we launched Centrino, a platform, a laptop that integrated Wi-Fi, and we marketed it, we pushed it, and all of a sudden, every coffee shop needed to have Wi-Fi. Every hotel room needed to have Wi-Fi. Every office needed to have Wi-Fi. So it was that Centrino moment, as we call it, that just drove Wi-Fi and the standardization into an existence a couple of years after the standards were finished. And all of a sudden, it changed the form factors, it changed the use case. Before that, I used Excel. After that, I used the internet, right? It became this connected thing and drove new use cases for it. And the world has not been the same since then. 20 years later, we think of the AI PC the same way, adding neural capabilities for AI workloads directly into the PC, where now I believe it's going to change the user interface. Instead of typing, I'll start talking to it. I'll see it. It will be new form factors. And all of a sudden, instead of needing to access the cloud for things, I'm going to do it on my local PC.
But then you're making the comparison with Centrino. Back then, you guys were the leaders. You were the ones bringing that to market. It seems like you have a slew of competition in the AI PC world. So what makes Intel different?
Well, part of it is, we're first. Our AI PC chips, people are talking about what they're going to do this year, and we're excited again, flattery, right? As they're following.
They're listening right now, by the way.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, yeah.
I love it because they're going to help to establish the category. And obviously, we're going to win by our volumes, the engagement with the ecosystem, and having the best products. So as long as our products are ahead, and we have key partners. Obviously Microsoft Copilot is super important, but we already have 100 ISVs that are running on the Core Ultra that we announced back in December, who are building their applications. They're not waiting for anybody. They're saying, wow, we're excited to start enabling these new visual effects, these new communications capabilities, these new audio use cases, taking text transcriptions and being able to give you summarizations of that on your local PC, on your local data. It's I believe this is a defining moment for the PC. And as Andy Grove said, the PC, the ultimate Darwinian device. And I think we're in one of those, Cambrian moments for the Darwinian PC.
You dropped that. That's cool. We're going to talk about everything here before you guys go party in Vegas. But if we're talking about, you went through servers, accelerators, PCs, and I just want to go back to accelerators for a moment. On December 14th, you brought up Gaudi 3. I think we were kind of expecting a little bit more.
Okay.
Can you give us a little bit more than what you spoke to, in just a few minutes? And I know you have your earnings coming up and stuff like that, but anything.
Yep. So 24, we'll be launching Gaudi 3 later this year. We have it out of fab now. It's in early test debug right now, so we're bringing it up in our labs as we speak. We'll start pushing it out to OEMs, our customers and software vendors in the next few months that they can start joining us in the debug process. But so far, the chip looks exquisitely good. The Habana Labs team that's driving this in Israel, they are an execution machine. And
there's been no delays because of what's been going on.
No,
nothing.
Right, and as I said in a recent interview, Israel, the most resilient people on earth, and they have not missed a single. Yeah, thank you. I have 22,000 souls there between Mobileye, Intel, our manufacturing and workers. They've not missed a single commitment on wafers, not missed a single commitment on products, despite dealing with that situation. I'm proud of our teams there, and the Gaudi team is one of them. They are executing super well.
So you bring up Israel, and I think of Mobileye, because you guys, last week, I'm sure many of you saw the news that came out of Mobileye, and they're pre-announcing the drop in sales. And again, we don't have to talk about sales per se, but it seems like maybe there's a theme right now of auto-related weakness. Microchip just yesterday talking about a weak environment, some inventory issues with customers. So what are you seeing with that? Is there a lot of double ordering, hoarding, and now they're just going through it?
Well, I do think there was a period coming off of COVID where everybody was so brutalized by not having inventories that everybody was sort of catching up, right, into the marketplace. And that drove a set of buying behaviors that created a bit of inventory in the channel and the tier one providers. And obviously Mobileye did their pre-announcement last week. And today they did a bunch of new product and vision announcements that they did yesterday.
Big partner, right, with a Western
Yes, a
automaker?
big Western partner. Hey,
Yeah.
there's probably 5 names you could associate with that, so we'll not disclose it.
I know,
We'll let them
trying.
do that soon enough. But the market here was disrupted, right? This was a catastrophic disruption as you went through the COVID cycle. Both the acceleration and the deceleration and the inventory problems and manufacturing. So I'll say this, I believe this is sort of the last correction cycle as a result of it in a more normal business environment. And as Mobileye guided.
Wait, what do you mean by last correction cycle? How could you predict that?
There was such extreme pain on the auto providers that everybody was building a bit more inventory, making sure they weren't caught flat-footed again, because you had factories that were stopped because they didn't have $1 semiconductors, right? A $40,000 car isn't shipping because of it. So I do think that there's sort of an accordion effect that always happens in supply chains. And, I think we had to work through that, and I think the rest of the industry, still has some of that to do. Plus, it's been an uncertain economic environment, right? We still have wars in Europe. The European economy has been weaker. Asia, U.S. It's just been, a period of time where a lot of stuff going on, and we're not finished. We still have 2 major wars going on in the world.
Yeah. What about Asia? Is there anything that you can just weigh on a weakness coming from that market, whether it be from the mobile, a PC market? It seems like at first, maybe a few months ago, I was reporting and thinking, okay, PC sales coming back, refresh, all of this conversation, and now maybe that cycle is not moving as quickly as we thought.
Yeah, I think China has been well chronologized. It didn't come back as strong as expected. Not terrible, but not as strong as expected in that growth. Otherwise, Asia actually did okay. India, had actually a quite good cycle as they finished the year. Europe, not as strong, and has I think been well chronologized. And U.S. was pretty good, as we went through the holiday period. So I think when you add all of that up, it just wasn't as strong as people were hoping for, as we finished the year. I do think as we look to this year, we think of the AI PC. We're now 4 years past when the COVID, PCs were first bought. So I think that starts to come back a little bit. Obviously, major new Windows operating systems is always beneficial. So we're more optimistic as we go through the year.
I want to bring it back to the United States and, talking about AI. Many of you guys have heard of, the New York Times suing OpenAI. OpenAI's rebuttal about that, saying that the New York Times, purposely rejigged it. I'm paraphrasing poorly now, but in terms of getting the articles. And so, do you believe that this is just going to catapult a bunch of lawsuits now going forward?
Yeah, I think that there isn't a legal framework yet that's really been thought through, because if you compare search to large language models, essentially in search, the search engine itself never has the content, right? It's giving you a pointer to the content.
Right.
And one of the things early in my career, I actually helped write what became the net neutrality laws.
Back in, 2002 or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. When we first drafted, Craig Mundy, CTO of Microsoft, and
you
myself.
were sitting there writing it?
Yeah,
literally.
we literally wrote what became.
Well, not writing it, you were writing it on a computer. But
And I do think that where there's going to be a legal framework that gets established because when you do a large language model, essentially you're compressing the internet into the model, right? It becomes intrinsically part of the model now as you then go do inferencing against that model. So in that, what will be the legal framework against that? Can I use third-party information? What's the copyright laws? I think there are going to be some lawsuits here. And remember, we're going to have lawsuits in different jurisdictions as well.
Of course.
U.S., what happens in Europe, how do they view it as well? So I do think that, whether this is a good one or a bad one with the New York Times and OpenAI, I firmly believe there's going to be a series of lawsuits that need to get reconciled for what is the legal framework around large language models, compressing the internet this way, and being able to use third-party information or not, and what are going to be the copyright laws associated with that.
Do you actually think there's an or not?
Well, if so, then you're going to have licensed content that gets used, right? And you're going to have to go pursue and get licenses from all of the content providers that you use in your model. Wow, right? That's going to, create a whole nother cycle of, what and how does that get utilized?
And helps the media market where I work, sustain our jobs.
Yeah, and we want you to have a great job, so.
Yeah, so let's not talk about that. But keeping on that conversation about regulation, and then that means that you have to be reliant on politicians and bureaucracy. We know how slow that is, but we also know how quickly AI is being adopted. So that's like, already they're slower than normal just because it's government. We have an election period coming, and then the adoption rate is so quick compared to any other technology phase. So how do we even come up with regulations within such a short amount of time?
Well, I don't think we will. I think the AI market is going to keep racing ahead because technology is enabling it to do so. And the courts and the regulatory environment will be chasing to catch up for a while. And eventually, some of those cases will come to court, whether that's in Europe or in the US, and it will start to reestablish a framework that the world, right, gets comfortable with about how AI is regulated, how content's regulated. And then, of course, we have to frame it in a way it isn't just about text on the internet, right? It's going to be about a much broader corpus of information as well going into those models. So I do think there's going to be a big set of legal and regulatory work that needs to occur here. But I'm actually, as we started the conversation, an optimist. We'll figure it out.
You are the leader of a large corporation making money. Of course you're going to be optimistic.
Yes. Is that bad?
No, not at all. Not
okay,
at all.
Good. Just checking.
Not at all. but of course, I almost didn't want to ask you that question to start off because I knew your answer, and you know the answer from a lot of tech leaders that of course they're going to be optimistic, because if you're not optimistic, you're not making money, sales, you're not employing all the people, and we wouldn't all be here listening to you.
But it's more important than that, because these AI use cases are demonstrating such extraordinary economic value. Right? It isn't just that we're going to make money or the other technology providers are going to make money associated with it. You're creating new economic value, right? We're taking use cases, and having 10, 100,000, 10,000x productivity improvements. This is stunning as a result. And because there's so much economic value in these use cases, the world is motivated to figure it out.
That productivity level, is that productivity something that is going to immediately come? A company will be extremely efficient, and then after that, you're going to see, a much smaller increment in. I'm not using the terminology properly, but I feel like there's an analogy with Moore's law that you can make there. Productivity is not going to keep growing as much, so it'll be this big bang now, maybe over the next decade, and then boom, we're on to something else.
Yeah, I think when we first introduced the internet, right? And we had e-businesses and new ways to reach customers. It was sort of this decade-long cycle. I think the AI cycle is at least that big. And sort of domain by domain, we're going to find the economic value, the use cases are going to get developed. We're going to get past the models hallucinating and building more and more confidence in what they do. But yeah, I think we're going to be in a 10-plus year cycle of figuring it out in different industries, and it's going to be quite thrilling.
So if we were to compare an AI model within the cloud and an enterprise user versus an AI model that we are eventually going to use on our phones, is the phone side going to change the economics, or on the edge, I should say, because of AI PCs? How is that going to change the economics of everything, given how expensive it is on the cloud?
Well, part of it is, I call it the 3 laws of edge computing. Whether that's your phone, whether that's the in-store computing, whether that's your personal computer. The first is laws of economics. Right? It's cheaper to do it in your device. You bought the device, I'm running it locally, I'm not renting cloud servers to do that. It's on my device. Second is the laws of physics. If I have to round trip the data to the cloud and back, okay, it's not going to be as responsive as I can do locally. And the third is the laws of the land. Right? Because am I going to take my data to the cloud, or am I going to keep it on my local device? Am I going to take my real-time factory data, my supply chain data, my local camera data to the cloud or not? And a lot of that's going to be regulated in some fashion or another. Or I, as the user, say, I'm not comfortable, right, with that data going to the cloud. So I think those 3 laws of economics, laws of physics, and laws of the land, will drive more of these AI use cases to the devices that we use across the edge. And that's part of what we mean when we say AI everywhere, right? We're going to push it and enable all of these devices locally. And maybe I don't need 100 languages on my local device. I just need the 2 that I need. And when I don't have that language, okay, I'll go to the cloud and download that additional model. I want it to work on my data if I'm the enterprise. I don't want all of my data, my factory data, my supply chain data going to the cloud. I want it to be operated on locally in my environment.
But if it's locally, how do companies like Intel continue to make money? I think of a phone, right? My phone is maxed out, so I got to pay money
to... Sell more PCs, sell more servers.
No, but I mean adding applications. Like right now with a cell phone, you have so many, you got to pay for saving all your photos because it doesn't fit on your phone and you have to transfer, so now I'm paying a monthly fee. And then that's putting it back on the cloud. So for a company like Intel, if it's going to be all localized, how do you add that incremental revenue when everything's there and it's a fixed cost, they buy the AI PC and done?
I think this is going to be a thrilling time of new use cases emerging, right? That all of the economic implications, we're going to be enjoying this for many CESs to come. We have a lot of innovation to do for this. And part of what does, when you run these models, it's compressing it into smaller and smaller form factors. So I'm able to get more intelligence locally with smaller and smaller footprints and models. And that's part of the magic of AI. We're just getting started.
Oh, look at that. It's almost as if you're a professional at this because the clock is literally down to 10 seconds, and that is a great way to end our conversation.
We are just getting started.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pat. I'll shake your hand. It was good. That was great.